So what are some of your other thoughts on Green's performance and the way he went about things?
So we were saying that he wasn't completely, making the quick decisions. He went into the work environment kind of with a long attitude. We kind of mentioned that, like, in his new position, he was told that he needed to collaborate with his superiors, kind of, and he went off and did the one thing that he was good at, and didn't really communicate that well with the other people.
Okay, so in other words, he got a new position, but he's still kind of working like he's in his old position.
That was even in the reading. So that fits. It said that sometimes when you move up, you have to use a whole different set of skills, not just the one that you're used to using, which in his case would be like the sales, right? Now he needs to be able to network, and he was refusing to do that. He's like, well, what's the point of making presentations and keeping you all updated? Like, well, the point is so that people can network and know what's going on and work together, and he just wouldn't do it.
And another point is, in our reading, they talked about when you're told to try something new, do something a new way, or have a new mental mode, when you're advocating for something, you need to give proof. And I felt like Davis was trying to do that. He's like, okay, you need to do charts because of this, and the sales are because of this. But when Green was trying to advocate for his way, he didn't really have any proof. He's like, oh, that's just kind of the way I've done it. Just kind of referencing what we read, I feel like Davis tried to back up his ideas a little bit with some proof when he was advocating for his way of doing things.
Yeah, I think Davis really tried to communicate with him pretty well, and Green just wasn't hearing it. I mean, even when Davis was like, I need to know where you're going. I just need to know what your schedule is, because he was looking like an idiot, like trying to get a hold of him in one area, and Green had already moved on to another area. So he wasn't even willing to do that. So I don't know.
And even though he had to try to prove, he also was the one that was coming into this new position, this new promotion without the experience. Like, he hadn't really worked his way up like Davis had. So I think he did have to try to work harder and make a bigger effort to change the way he did things.
So if you guys were Shannon McDonald, would you have hired Green for this position in the first place?
I think I probably still would have taken a chance. I mean, you don't really know. But I think she's in a position now to be honest with him.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that he showed promise, but I think that what he needed to do was make sure that he took her advice to seek out the other managers and learn from them because of his lack of experience. So she was taking a risk that he would be able to do that. But also they only met face to face like twice after that, so she couldn't really reiterate like, hey, make sure that you are networking, that you are speaking with the other managers and learning from them, because this is not something that you are familiar with and comfortable with yet.
Yeah, maybe there should have been some training there before he was able to go into that position. And
that's smart, yeah.
Do you think she should have involved Davis in the decision? Because he pretty much had someone that he was going to make the replacements. Do you think McDonald should have involved him?
That definitely would have been a good idea, I think.
Or at least shown Davis the reasons that she wanted to hire Green. I don't know if she did that, or if Davis was just told, hey, here's the new guy. Because it sounds like she had some good reasons to hire him. He had made quite the effort to sell himself and to establish those workplace relationships with her. So I think I agree with her hiring them.
Okay. And how would you guys describe? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I like Maureen's point because I seem to recall a lot of people that I know who help make hiring decisions. They will interview lots of people, and some people have the skills, but they don't have the personality. And some people have the personality, but they don't have the skills. You can't really train people to change their personalities, but you can train them in the skills. So a lot of times they'll hire people that have a personality that meshes with the overall vibe of the company, kind of like in our previous chapters, right? Company culture. And then they'll help train them in the skills. So while I don't think that she was necessarily wrong to hire him, maybe she should have involved Davis, because then they could have explained, like, hey, our company culture is this. We're very optimistic. We've seen this much growth. We believe in this. And he doesn't seem to, and that's going to be a problem. And they could have nipped that in the bud.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Davis should have been more involved, because ultimately he's the one that has to work with them and evaluate them and train them.
Right.
So what do you guys think of Frank Davis as a person and a boss?
I get the vibe he's kind of old school, whatever that means. Like, does that make sense? Like he's so maybe he wasn't as flexible as he should have been, but I think he was trying.
Yeah, I think we see this in today's world, because you have these managers and these guys that are kind of old school, and then you have this new generation, the millennials coming in, and they don't do things the same way. So you do see these situations a lot where they just don't want to work the same way manager is working, and someone that's old school doesn't want to, change and work the new way. So I know in my husband's business, he's seen this a lot, because he manages younger people sometimes, and it's really frustrating when they don't mesh.
I give Davis props for trying, though, and I think that he should have, like, professionally, like he needed to still give Green a try. And I feel like he did that. Like, he brought him in and he explained, like, hey, when you do this, it makes me feel this way, or these are the consequences. Like, and he gave specific examples. He's like, when you don't update your calendar, I can't get a hold of you, and then I can't get the information that I need that day, So this is a problem. And he did try to, like, do things, like, yes, he's a little old school and by the book, but he also did things the appropriate way. And I can see how Green might take that as, that whole ladder of inference thing, like, oh, he wants to fire me because he was making sure that everything was written down and logged and noted, like, hey, we talked about this. But hopefully he wouldn't just, assume, like, oh, I'm going to get fired. Hopefully he just takes that as, okay, no, that's just his old school way of doing things to make sure that his bases are covered, and I just need to step up my game so that I don't get fired. I don't know. I give both props. I guess I can see both points of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed like Green just wasn't willing to compromise anything or change any of his habits. So what do you guys think Green values? What do you think his values are and his end goal?
He seems to value his position, right? Like I guess, what is it called? Like his status, like, oh, I'm the hot shot. I'm the one that comes in and does it this way, and it works every time, and it gets results, because that, like, he wanted to come in and make a big bang. That was kind of his whole deal coming into the company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was impressed by his attitude, how he described himself as he wanted to, like, hit the ground running and stuff like that. So I admire him for him just being, outgoing and confident that he, can make it to that point at least and succeed.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but he needs to take the side of some humility and learn from the others. Like McDonald told him, you need to go in and learn from the seasoned employees that have been doing this. And I think in the, was it the second or third meeting, Davis finally showed him, these are the kind of presentation I want to see. This is the kind of thing I want to see. So I think Davis, if he mentored him more and showed him what he was looking for, that would have helped the communication.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like before anything even went down, he should have like went over that kind of stuff with him. So he's like already like set in the right path instead of like going a little while and then, you know,
have those expectations, knowing what's expected of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was in the reading also.
Yeah, you only fault Green so much for not doing what they wanted him to when he had no training or no one. I mean, they said in the reading this and this, but he was kind of thrown in there without the training that you guys, someone had said definitely would have helped if he had some training.
Yeah.
Or even just more face-to-face meetings where they just talked and said, hey, this is kind of what I expect, and oh, this is how I expect this to run, and then they could figure out what's the same and what's different, and if there's something that's different, they could figure out what like needs to give.
Yeah, and the other thing is Green needs to stop talking behind Davis's back. That's, if he ever finds out, which he probably will because people talk, that's gonna be very damaging to him.
It's so unprofessional, and it damages Green's integrity too.
It's not just a coworker, it's his boss.
Yeah, I felt that was one of his biggest downfalls, was his talking to everybody else and getting their feedback instead of going directly to Davis and trying to work on it directly with him.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't someone tell him to like stand his ground or something like that? Was that in there?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
supposedly the other managers.
I don't think he's in a position to stand his ground. He's not in charge. He's not the boss. Like,
yeah.
You only get so much to stand on there.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the numbers, like whether or not he was correct on that. Someone like, I think told him like stand his ground on the numbers, you know, those projections that he didn't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure.
Well, here's.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, here's my thought on that. So I have a hard time believing that Green is right about the numbers, in part because he is always a little bit cocky and confident. And so he just assumes that he knows what's best, and in part also just because of his behavior behind his boss, and because he won't back his point with numbers. Davis did, he did not. And he's bad-mouthing his boss for no apparent reason, which just makes me kind of question his character, which also then makes me question his overall rationale. I mean, and maybe that's me jumping up the ladder of inference, but I have a harder time believing that he's right. And if he thinks that, you know, oh, everybody says stand my ground, well, maybe that's him hearing what he wants to hear. Like maybe they're like, oh, well, maybe Davis could just a little bit, but for the most part, you know, he's right. But all Green would be hearing is, oh yeah, stand your ground, you know, because they said this one little part that maybe meant that I was right. I don't know.
So what do you guys think he should do now?
If he wants to keep his job, he needs to try to fix that relationship.
He needs to meet the expectations of Davis. Like, do what he asks. It's that simple.
And the expectations of McDonald, right, Shannon? Because she had asked him to put something in writing also. Green refuses to put anything in writing or make any sort of presentation.
Yeah, he needs to be willing to learn from others.
Okay. The next question is how can you repair the relationship? So, but those are kind of tied together. What should he do next, and how can he repair the relationship? So, I think all those next steps could help repair that relationship with Davis.
Mm-hmm.
But they need to have a good sit down that's not an evaluation. and go over what's happening.
And another thing is, whenever Davis was addressing his concerns, it sounds like Green was like, just having like a surface agreement, just saying, okay, sure, just for the point of agreeing.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Not being sincere.
Right. It shows that he's not really willing to change. So you're right, he wasn't listening.
That's a good point. I hadn't picked up on that.
And then when the door shut, he was bad-mouthing him, so that's not
Yeah, it said he was telling him what he wanted to hear. So he wasn't, Green wasn't being honest with Davis at all. He was just saying what he thought Davis wanted to hear. So that's where that relationship and the humility and going one-on-one, willing to learn to keep his job.
Mm-hmm.
And the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, he needs to actually act on that. Like, once he makes that change of heart to like, okay, I'm willing to listen, then he needs to actually try, and then he needs to show that he's trying by actually giving them the reports they ask for, and actually writing things down when they ask him to, and actually updating his calendar. It's the little things. The little things add up.
Yes, it seems like just little small tweaks he can make would go a long way. So in this reading, there's a lot of office politics. How do you think those come into play in other organizations? Have you guys ever experienced anything like that personally?
Well, I don't know if this counts as a really big experience. I haven't worked a lot of jobs. I'm still young, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. But one of my first jobs, we had 2 different bosses while I was there, and the first boss, everybody got along with really well, and he was amazing, and he inspired everybody to be better, and he like pushed everybody. And then this new boss came in because the other guy left to take a higher position, you know, because he'd worked hard and deserved it, and we were all really happy for him. But so this new guy comes in, and he just starts like upending everything. He like changed how everything was done. He what mattered changed. So like if we were focusing on getting memberships, now suddenly he wants us to focus on gift card sales or something totally different. And he just kind of just threw it all at us and said, okay, go. And there wasn't a lot of, you know, training or like, okay, now this is how we're going to do it, or this is why we're going to do it. Even it was just do it. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so I don't know if that's really office politics, but I feel like at least something I could have done looking back now, you know, hindsight's 2020. I was young and naive, and I was just kind of the myth, like, what is he doing person? But I could have maybe gone and talked to him or talked to any of the managers in between, right? And just kind of been like, hey, can you explain how this is done? Or like, what's the basis behind this, so that I can, you know, understand, not that I necessarily need to know why for everything, but just to kind of be inspired and motivated, you know, it would have been helpful. And that, I think, was office politics, because instead of anybody like actually talking to him, they were just all kind of grumbling and mumbling under their breath. I don't know. Does that count?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. It sounds like it all comes down to the training and the communication between employees and managers.
Yeah, and your willingness to understand where someone's coming from. Being open-minded and asking the right questions.
Okay, and do you guys see any connections between this case and this week's reading assignments? One connection that I would say is in Covey's book, they need to find a solution that's a win-win solution. And I might be a little bit ahead in the book because I was on a long trip, so I listened to a lot of it yesterday. But then just energizing. I don't know if you've gotten to that part in the book, but just having that real sit-down conversation where it's like, look, this is going to work for both of us. and this is what we can do, and not just shooting each other down, but finding a solution that works for both of them.
Yeah, I felt that that's what Green should do, and go to Davis and say, let's make this a win-win situation. I felt that would be a good, positive way to work with Davis.
Yeah, I feel like they haven't had any conversation like that at all at this point.
I just think that Green needs to, have that change of heart, like someone mentioned earlier. Because at this point, I don't think he's willing to do anything like that. He's already thinking about whether or not he needs to leave the job, and so he has not taken any blame. So,
Right. Do you guys see any other concepts from the reading that we haven't discussed that we can take away?
I remember reading a lot about integrity. There was one part that says, honesty is telling the truth. In other words, conforming our words to reality. But integrity is conforming reality to our words. So if you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. And then in the very next paragraph, it says one of the most important ways to manifest integrity is to be loyal to those who are not present. If that doesn't hit the nail on the head with this case, then I don't know what does.
That's exactly what I was just thinking of that reading, that, if you talk about somebody behind their back to someone else, then the person you're talking to is not going to trust you either, because they see that's the type of person you are.
That's a good point.
All right, anyone have any last comments? Or
I just wanted to comment on what the last part of the case, when it was saying, I think Braxton, you were just saying this. He kind of already assumes he's going to get fired, as if they're out to get him. Like, he doesn't even see that he's done anything wrong. He's like, oh, okay, they just don't like the way I'm doing things. Like, he's not even doesn't even see that he's done anything wrong, because he's already thinking he's going to be fired. So he's just seeing that it's them against him. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
That's interesting, because when I was noticing that he thought he was going to be fired, I thought it was because he was like subconsciously feeling guilty. Like, oh man, they're going to fire me because they just don't like the way I'm doing things. But then he's also like being stubborn and refusing to change. So I like your perspective, because I would never thought of it that way.
Maybe both.
So we lost Megan.
Oh no, hopefully she'll hop back.
Yeah. She's the one that's recording this one too, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, hopefully she got enough.
Yeah.
I think we were just wrapping it up, so.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
Does anyone have the questions open so we can?
There's an ending paragraph. It says there's like the rest of the story that I could read. I think it says after McDonald's February 5th, 2008 email, Green took the offensive against his boss. He crafted a series of memorandums, emails, reports, and projections that exposed inaccuracies and creative forecasting. The data enabled Green to build some alliance with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis was being moved literally to an undefined special project. However, Green's tactics were seen as overly brutal by many in the company, and although he won the battle against his boss, his career was irreparably harmed. McDonald distanced herself from him. By July of 2008, Green announced that he was resigning from his position to pursue full-time studies for an MBA.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it sounds like maybe Davis's numbers were a little high, but there was so much better way to handle that situation than to just launch an attack at him. Good heavens.
Well, there wasn't much respect left for Green, and then after that, it was all gone.
I see a pattern forming at each of his jobs. He needs to fix his ways or he's not going to be successful.
Yeah.
The nice thing is he's still in his 20s, so maybe some maturity will help with that.
Wow.
Hopefully. Oh.
Maybe graduate school will fix him.
So my question is, how does this fit with the networking part of it? I'm kind of struggling with how this fits with networking with the people around you besides being willing to learn and work with them. Does that make sense?
I think what he just read about McDonald's kind of proved that point. Like, she could have been a good person to have in his contacts for moving on, but because of his attitude, that network is gone. He could have built some really strong relationships, and let's say he moved on for other reasons, he could have kept those strong relationships and had all of those people in his network, but because he's kind of burning bridges wherever he goes, so his network's not following him.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that actually cleared it up for me too.
Thanks, Misty. I agree.
Well, whose turn is it next week?
It's my turn.
Awesome. And then I think it's mine, right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
All right.